Today, we're going to be talking about formerly known as the Oregon Conservation Strategy, but Oregon State Wildlife Action Plan Technical Review. And the sections that we're covering today are under key habitats, and we're looking at flowing water and riparian habitats, wetlands, and natural lakes. So our agenda for today is we're going to start out with a quick welcome and setting the stage. I have a note about beaver, and then we're going to go through and do a little bit of like what are we looking for the reviews, using the wetland section as an example. Some of the things that we've changed and updated for flowing waters and riparian, and then some key questions we'd like you to consider for natural lakes. We'll wrap up with what are we asking for folks, and what kind of help do we need, and how best to offer that. And please do ask questions as we go, and we'll have some time at the end. So to start with, I like to open any conversation with some meeting or discussion agreements to set the stage. And in order to make this work for everybody, we are asking for people to raise their hands, and we'll call on folks as their hands come up. But in general, I'm asking people to be curious, open, and respectful. All ideas are valid. Differences of opinions are natural and useful. We'd like you to speak from your own personal experience. And everybody here is responsible for the process. I want to make sure that everyone gets to participate, so be aware of airtime, and give people a chance if you've already been able to participate and contribute. Please respect confidentiality when appropriate, and I want to make sure everyone is able to contribute. Respecting each other's opinions, even and especially if you don't agree with them, and be conscious of time. In my role as the facilitator, I will move us on if we need to, just to want to make a note on it so everyone has the same expectations. Any questions on this? And if you've been to these, you've heard me go through these a couple of times now. Okay, great. So here's what's in the habitat sections, and what are some of our review processes. Each section, with the exception of the specialized and localized habitat, which is a little bit of a different format, but each one includes a list of the ecoregions where the habitats can be found, conservation overview, identification of limiting factors, and then the recommended approaches to address those limiting factors. And then we have an opportunity for additional resources. And we're also asking specifically, as you're reviewing these, that if you come up with data gaps or things that we need to identify that needs work in the future, we would really appreciate hearing that from you as well. So to start with, I wanted to talk about the beaver in the room. No, I wanted to talk about how we're handling beaver habitat spotlights. So there are multiple different habitat sections, including flowing waters and wetlands that have their own beaver habitat spotlight. And it's similar material between the different sections with some adjustments and nuances depending on what the content is in that particular section. And so we are asking people to both comment on what's in the particular section that we're looking at now, and there's also an opportunity to provide some feedback to kind of a working draft on the revision page. And so you have two different places to do that. So if you have some specific beaver related comments, you can do them in either format. Any questions on that? So how are we asking for comments? Someone else asked me this, I think, via email. So what would be super helpful is that each of these sections is numbered by line. And we've been going through a process over time of integrating different sets of comments. And the easiest thing is when someone says, hey, I would like you to suggest new wording for line 2, or lines 2 through 5, are missing this concept. And the more clear and concise and, and text relevant you can provide, the easier our lives are, and particularly my life, actually, because I'm doing a lot of the integration, to be able to get people's comments added in. And so if you can, we'll show you the comment form later, but if you can think about it in terms of providing really specific, like, hey, we'd like to see this changed in this area, that makes our lives a lot easier. It also means that we're also capturing the specific place that you feel like needs the most adjustment. So this is just an example. This is text from the wetland section. And it's a good example of like the kind of level we're looking for. So this is a bit of an art of a balance. It's like we want this to have valuable scientific information, but we're also trying to appeal to a very general audience. And so we wanted to do the best we can to make this accessible for multiple audiences and folks that are coming from this with different knowledge sources and different understandings. And so we're intentionally not citing specific references within the text. We are asking people to be able to provide resources and references at the end so that if they have questions or they want to look for more information, they have those resources available. So here's an example of some of the things we'd like you to consider when you're looking at the wetlands chapter, section. Is there's a lot of variation in wetlands, and while we don't want to be too exhaustive, we do really want to capture the full range of wetland variability and types, and also where they can be found in different ecoregions. So if you're looking through this and you're saying, hey, this is an important wetland type and it's missing, that would be super valuable. And especially if you're able to also say, and it's, there's an ecoregion section as well, like this is where it's found. We've been asking, are there any limiting factors that need additional updates? Or if there's a limiting factor that hasn't been identified, we're certainly open to that. The more information you can provide, the better. And then what additional resources should be included? Some of our resources and references are, from the last cycle and they're 10 years old. And so if there's new science or new information that would be helpful for people to know, it'd be really great to get those links and references. I'm just pausing for questions. Okay, so flowing water and riparian habitats. So this section went through a pretty major overhaul. And we tried to add quite a bit of additional content and to really be able to separate this into what's relevant for flowing water and what's relevant for riparian. I think everyone recognizes this as a continuum, and obviously these things are connected, but we wanted to be able to provide some specific information and guidance. And so we really enhanced the characteristics section so that there's characteristics for flowing water and riparian habitat separately. As we mentioned earlier, this section has an addition of a beaver spotlight. And there's also been quite a bit of work to be clear on the regulatory framework, and then a little bit of restructuring on limiting factors. And so in this section, please do read through this because there's been a lot of changes, and we're looking for any additional review comments and identification of resources obviously is appreciated. Questions on this? Okay. Yeah, it looks like we've got a question.
Yeah, I hope I didn't miss the opportunity to actually provide a comment on the wetlands piece, and part of it was not understanding maybe the structure of your agenda this afternoon. I do have a comment about missing type of habitat in the wetlands area, specifically in the coastal ecoregion. There are wetlands that are inundated by the tide, but are freshwater in nature. So
Okay.
basically, some clarification on the fact that there is within our estuaries a spectrum of wetlands, some vegetated, some non-vegetated, that occur because of tidal inundation. And the state went through a comprehensive effort to map the extent of estuaries in about a decade ago using the Coastal and Marine Ecological Classification Standard. And so I would just make a suggestion. I'm happy to provide this in writing to you as well, that the wetlands section recognizes those unique coastal habitats that either freshwater or saltwater are inundated by the tides.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that's going to come up in the next sections we're going to review are estuaries and dunes and coastal dunes. So that I know that there was some work on looking at both freshwater and saltwater systems. Sorry, I'm a freshwater person. But I think that this is one of those spaces, a good example where like some things may fit in multiple spaces. So I think it's worth making the references. And then what we've done is we've cross-referenced with other sections. And so written comments definitely appreciated. So if there's something that we should be including here within wetlands, and then making sure we make a note that it's also in estuary habitats, that would be great.
Okay.
And I haven't told people how to provide feedback yet, so we'll get to that. That's a little bit later. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, so then the other one that we're looking at is natural lakes. And so some of the questions we'd like folks to think about is that we've identified some of the important systems. Are we missing something? Are there additional key locations and ecoregions that are not mentioned? As always, we're asking, are there any limiting factors that need to be updated or added? And then are there new links that should be included? And just as a note for folks that are providing comments, since we're doing a lot of these, we do from time to time miss the transition between the terminology for Oregon Conservation Strategy and SWAP. And so just to acknowledge that as we're editing, feel free to point those out. We are transitioning to key habitats instead of strategy habitats, and species of greatest conservation need instead of strategy species. And so sometimes we miss some of the links on that. So we're working to make those corrections for the final process. Any questions on natural lakes? Okay. So how do you best comment? First of all, the reason that we're having these discussions is really to queue up these different chapters. Pardon me, I'll keep saying chapters, but it's sections. Queue up these different sections so that there's a time period so that we can ask for your feedback. And as I've said in other slides, it's really here to help us ensure accuracy of distribution of habitat types, conservation needs, limiting factors, and recommended approaches. We really appreciate if there's additional peer-reviewed references and resources you'd like us to include. And then it also would be super helpful if people can identify, any significant data gaps that have been missed. And it's okay if we are not able to answer. Like, we do actually really want the data gaps, in addition to updating for new information. And so this is how we're asking for feedback. What's helpful is to receive feedback in the feedback form. This is available on the SWAP revision website. And as I said earlier, if you can provide line numbers X to X, if you have a specific or detailed comment, that would be really appreciated. And it's helpful for us to have references. We are giving a 2-week window for each of these section updates. And so we're asking for comments on this section no later than April 18th. And then here's the link if you want to be able to access that. And I think we could probably stick that in the chat later. Or if somebody else who's watching wants to do that, that'd be great. So then, and we have some time for additional conversation. So once we finish this presentation portion, we can talk some more. So just so people know what's coming up on the calendar, and we try to get notification out about 2 weeks in advance. So the next two are estuaries and coastal dunes on 4/15. And then we'll be wrapping up the habitat components with grasslands and sagebrush on 4/23. And then we're going to be starting with the key conservation issue sections. There'll be a couple of meetings for those in late April, early May. And then that should wrap up like this immediate portion. There may be some additional opportunities for engagement, but this is kind of what we have scheduled so far. And as I said, you can either provide feedback through the website or you can send a direct email. And please sign up for updates if you haven't already.